Well, thank you very much, Justin. So tonight we have Kyle Tutt, the CEO and co-founder of Pinata, which is a media and data management for the Web3 space. All creators, developers, NFTs, you name it, the fun stuff. But Kyle, I love to start these with some context. Tell us, in your own words, what is Pinata? What do you guys do?
So the way we talk about it is we are the home for Web3 media. It used to be NFT media. Now it's like, not as like sexy as of a word because people lost a bunch of money in it. And I'll get into why that happened. But so we manage like the media behind NFTs. When you think of an NFT, you probably think of like an image, a video, music. We've seen people build applications that are actually NFTs. A significant portion of the space uses us underneath to manage that media, whatever that file type ultimately is. And what we help them do is serve that to whether it's one person that buys that NFT or millions of people that are viewing, specific NFT collections or whatever it is. Essentially, what needed to happen is these NFTs needed like YouTube level scale of serving content, but they couldn't use YouTube, they couldn't use Instagram, they couldn't use those types of platforms. So we became kind of that place specifically for NFTs underneath.
That's awesome. And I've seen you guys have been absolutely on a tear the last few months, but the last couple of years as a whole. It seems like you've been hiring a lot. In terms of scale, how many users do you guys generally have? Number of employees?
So we have over 300,000 users. Those range all the way from like a single individual artist all the way up to large enterprises and like NFT marketplaces and those types of things. So we range all the way through different use cases. They all need certain kind of data and media capabilities that we provide for them. And it's crazy to see like just the different innovation. Because we don't mint, we've been able to see like different use cases of NFTs that many other people don't get to see. And we tend to, I always think our customers are like on the front edge or leading edge of technology, and we get to see those early and try to enable them and help them out and scale their own projects. And then was there a second part of that question?
If there was, I forgot it.
So,
so of course you didn't start there, with hundreds of thousands of users and big partnerships with corporations. So if we rewind the clock a bit and go back, maybe even before you started Pinata, tell us about, even getting into the Web3 space. It's something that's been on a huge growth trajectory over the last couple of years. I think everybody here has probably heard of it in the news.
Yep.
Kind of seen it everywhere. A lot of it is because of NFTs, but before really like 2020, 2019, that really big kind of tear in NFTs, I feel like a lot of people hadn't heard of Web3, and that's generally about the time when you guys got started, right?
Yeah, so we actually started Pinata back in October or November of 2018.
Okay.
And my co-founder, Matt Ober, and I, at the time, were just doing like blockchain consulting. So we were building smart contracts for various applications out there, just trying to like learn about blockchain, cryptocurrency, smart contracts, all of that kind of stuff. And just trying to basically survive. We knew like we wanted to be in this space. We wanted to build a company, but like ultimately we weren't trying to be like day traders or crypto bros or anything like that. We wanted a company. And through the consulting, going out and learning about all these different problems that we were experiencing, we found this problem, which is like storing data on a blockchain is exponentially expensive. So it's like something like $4.5 million to store at 1 gigabyte on the Ethereum blockchain. And so obviously that doesn't make sense at all. And so what people were using is this technology called IPFS, or the Interplanetary File System. At the time, not very fast, not very stable. And so what we did is we're like, let's just make it as fast and stable as possible. We spun up our own IPFS node, started running it, launched it at this hackathon called ETH Berlin, which was in September of 2018. Ended up winning that hackathon. And then I always like to say, like, we thought we were going to take over the world, raise a bunch of money, have a bunch of users, and absolutely nobody used us for at least 2 years. It was like a huge struggle to get people to use us. But what it enabled is, like, we kept calling people, we kept going to hackathons, and we were able to build, number one, credibility with developers, especially in the blockchain space. They're very, I'll say, defensive. Because there is kind of like a lot of fraud and scams and all that kind of stuff. And so like they saw us in 2018 when nobody else was there. And so we had kind of like this outsized impact. And that led into, once NFTs started taking off, they were able to trust us and know that we were in the space for good reasons, not just to make a quick buck. And ultimately, once NFTs started taking off in 2020, we were there and able to capture a lot of that.
That's incredible timing. So how do you and Matt divide up responsibilities? I mean, what sections of the company do you primarily focus on?
Yeah, so Matt is the CTO. He handles all of the technology and the engineering side of things. In the early days, it was like building, the front end, the back end, all of that kind of stuff. And then, my job, I couldn't do really anything except like call people. Like literally, that's all I did. I made the logo too, but like I just called people. And I remember I was calling them on Zoom in 2018, and like nobody would have their cameras on, right? Because like until COVID, like cameras on Zoom was not a thing. And so I just remember being on these Zoom calls and talking to people, engineers. I would like scroll through GitHub and like find their email in their thing and be like, hey, I see you're using IPFS. Why don't you use Pinata? Like doing that kind of stuff. And was able to just connect with people and see what they were building and try to understand and like, make our product work in a way that ultimately would work for them, and was able to kind of grow the company. So it would be like, we would see one user a day, and then it would be like 2 users a day. And then eventually it was like 4, and then, it starts taking off. And then the other part of that story is like Matt's on the other side, just trying to make it as stable as possible. I don't think he sleeps much, ensuring that our systems are always up. One of our core like principles as a company is, in a very unstable space, if you're very stable, you don't even have to have the best product. You just have to like be stable and be there, and people can rely on you. And Matt is a big part of that, because he like ensured, even when we had one customer, that the system was working and was always working. And he did an incredible job on that side.
So you spent, years now. You're talking after you won ETH Berlin at this hackathon. I want to ask about that. So you went to a hackathon. I am getting that you're non-technical.
Yeah.
What did you do during the hackathon?
Okay.
I've never been to one, so forgive me.
My idea. So when I quit my job and jumped into crypto, so this would have been April of 2017. I was sitting in Omaha, and I'm like, all right, I don't know crypto. I don't know blockchain. Like, how am I going to actually learn this subject? And my idea was, I'm going to fly to New York, go to the Consensus conference. I couldn't afford to get in the conference, so I was like, I'm going to go to the hackathon. And I locked myself in a room with 2 other guys that were blockchain engineers or software developers, and just learn the technology. I was like, I need to understand fundamentally what is happening with blockchain. I know what proof of work is, what proof of stake is. I know consensus mechanisms, all that kind of stuff. And it was because I locked myself in those rooms, and I did that all summer in 2017, all the way into 2018. And what I did is like, they need a pitch guy.
Yep.
That's the truth of it. It was like, I could do a little bit of graphic design, like not good, but it was better than they could do. And then I could like try to focus them on like an interesting problem that we're ultimately solving. And so basically all I did was listen to them talk for 24 hours and like created a little pitch deck and then pitched. And just kept doing that and was able to build a network of software engineers. And then, when I convinced Matt to quit his job, I got him to go do this hackathon and compete in it. And, we were just at ETH Denver. Hackathons are like a huge part of who we are and what we do, because ultimately it's really exciting to be in a confined amount of time for 24 to 48 hours building something and just like iterating quickly. And then we try to expand that into our products and features ultimately that we have at Pinata.
So did it take a lot of convincing, or I guess trust building probably is the best way to phrase it, to really earn the trust of the development community? Because it sounds like you spent a lot of time, during those conferences, of course, with your team, but then afterwards trying to convince developers to use Pinata.
Yeah, a lot of it was like just being authentic. Like we had this, and we still have this rule. It's like we call it the 5-to-1 show ratio. So you have to create 5 educational blogs where you're teaching people how to do something in the space, because like it's difficult to learn in the space. A lot of it happens on Twitter, subreddits. Like it's difficult to know what's true and what's not. And so we spend a lot of time educating the space on like how to build something, right? And we have to have 5 educational blogs to 1 blog where we're just shilling or advertising Pinata. And that like really, really builds like a community. And then on the other side of that, like we spend a lot of time just talking to developers all the time, and like being authentic in that way. Like the word of mouth is just like huge. And if you get that word of mouth with developers, that community is not that big. There's a couple million developers in the United States. And if you can like build that brand in that community, you have like a great base layer to build a company off of.
I imagine it's a really tight-knit community as well.
Very. And like they learn, or they know when, I individually would scrape GitHub emails because I read somewhere on Reddit that software engineers don't like when you mass scrape their email. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do this the hard way. I'm literally going to email every single person and do it in an authentic way. And ultimately, I think they respected that. And we weren't like just selling them, right? We were trying to help them and make them better and make their project better. Whatever they're trying to do, we were trying to help them first. And then, hopefully that would pay off in the long run.
Yeah. So if you're, the span of time of 2 years kind of like draws me aback, like 2 years from the time when you really started, like took off with Pinata, but then it was 2 years before you really started to see some significant growth.
Yep.
What was that time period like?
I lived in my parents' basement. That's always my favorite kind of talking point around that. I had the lowest amount of burn personally that I could have, and I had great support from my parents and my now wife. I don't know what she saw in me at the time, because like living in your parents' basement is in being a crypto guy is not something that I would have stuck with. But anyways, we were just trying to find customers, and like we focused not on the money, because we weren't making any amount of money. It was like, all right, that one daily user, one person logs in every single day and uses our system, and that gets to 2. And like that was the most exciting thing for us. And I remember we were stuck at like 56 for the longest time, and like it's just kind of demoralizing. But then like all of a sudden you have this huge pop, and all of a sudden you're at 70, and then it became 130, and it kind of just gets exponential after that. And like that's the thing that we focused on. And I was able to like get Matt to focus on that as well, and just be like, all right, we're making progress. Like this market will find us eventually. We knew we had a product that needed to be used. It was just like the market needed to find us, and eventually, in middle of 2020, as COVID and all that stuff is happening, NFTs like started taking off, and we were right in the middle of it because I have nothing to do. So I'm like, hanging out in the metaverse, quote unquote, called crypto voxels at the time. And like I'm walking around in this world, and there's like people creating NFTs, and it's artwork and all that kind of stuff. And I like dig into it, and it's like you get dropped into a Dropbox account, and it was just like not cool, right? And so I was like, all right, if I can get these people, there's like 1,500 artists / developers / like musicians, whatever, in this metaverse. If I can get them to use Pinata, like we're in a good position. And like we were able to actually get them to ultimately convert to using IPFS and Pinata. And then like once those wheels start spinning, like everybody was like, how do we build an NFT? And we just have blogs everywhere about here's how you build an NFT with IPFS and Pinata. And as everybody starts pouring into the space, it was like we needed to be 2 years early because otherwise we would have missed that moment, right?
Interesting. How do you get people from the metaverse to start using Pinata? Do you take like a billboard out in the metaverse?
Yes, I did.
No? Oh, wow.
Straight up, that's what I did.
That was a guess. Okay.
Yeah. And it just said upload to Pinata. And I learned, because like I had nothing to do during COVID, I learned how to build like Minecraft looking Pinatas. And I just had like 4 of them on this billboard that said upload to Pinata. And I just bought, it was like $50 a month. It was like a great deal. I bought these billboards, and then like people would end up, I also bought a piece of land, and that was like our office. And then so I was just like wandering around. I also like created a 3D Pinata that I was wearing. So everybody else had like human looking things, and I'm a Pinata. And it worked great. Like it was actually pretty cool.
That is just strange enough to work.
Yeah.
I love it. How did you come up with the name Pinata?
So going back, again, I had a lot of time back. Now I have no time, it feels like. But back then I had a lot of time to sit and think about things. And the underlying idea was the company I started before Pinata was called Block Era. And I hated it because it was talking about blockchain. It was like, it even has the name Era in it. It's so on the nose. And I spent a lot of time thinking about, obviously, Apple and how they were competing about IBM back in the 80s or, late 70s. And I was like, I want an abstract word that could represent the company, because the technology is going to change underneath, right? And we need a representation of who we are that can allow the technology to change, but people still know the brand and understand like what we're about and who we are. And so like that was in the back of my mind on what I was trying to do. So that's one. Number 2, being at these hackathons, I wanted a logo that could ultimately like go viral at the hackathon. Like we needed a sticker that would be on somebody's laptop, and everybody would then want to have that sticker.
Draws
right?
people's attention, yeah.
And then 3, I was at ETH Waterloo, which is where it's a hackathon. It's where the first like successful NFT project launched, and it was called Crypto Kitties. And like I saw Crypto Kitties go viral at this hackathon, and I was very inspired by like what that is. And I was like, so when I'm sitting at these hackathons not doing anything, I'm like watching developers and how they interact with each other and like what they like and what they don't like and all that kind of stuff. And they like stickers, and they like cute looking stickers, right? And so all of that in context, I did want to derive from technology though. So when you store data on IPFS or the Interplanetary File System, you pin it to the IPFS nodes. And so I was like, pinball, pinwheel. We almost went with pinwheel, but at the time we didn't want to be flywheel. So we're like, all right, Pinata. And so we came up with Pinata, and I like created the logo with my very basic graphic design skills, and then like we just stuck with it ever since.
The colors basically the same as what they are now?
It's exactly the same. It hasn't
Really?
changed at all. Yeah.
That's impressive. Yeah, I love it. I want a sticker, by the way.
I didn't bring them. I forgot them. They're sitting at my office in a box right now. But.
They are. They're like currency. So I have to ask, what is a node? Can you describe that like layman's terms? Simple way to describe a node. It's like a server.
Yeah, it's similar. Like you can run an IPFS node on your mobile device. You can run it on your, your cloud server, your laptop, whatever. IPFS itself is a peer-to-peer protocol, and a lot of people like it because they think it's censorship resistant, or like you store data there and it exists forever. Those things aren't true. But like what we liked about it is when you upload data to IPFS. It generates what's called a CID, or a content identifier, and it's what like made us like successful in NFTs. Is when you upload that and get that CID, if the file changes at all, so if that image changes, that video changes, whatever, that CID changes, and so it gives you verifiable proof that the file is what it's supposed to be, or if it's not, you can prove that it's changed, and then you can create this like perfect record when you put it on a blockchain. You create this perfect record of like what happened to a file over time, and also you create a perfect way to access that file. So in traditional computing, usually what you do is you store data based on a location. So it's like XYZ server over here in Ohio. With IPFS, they don't care. They just want that CID. They call the CID and then grab the file wherever it's coming from and get access to it. So there's like these really cool properties that we like always liked about IPFS, and is ultimately the reason we built a company around it.
So the CID basically is like the functionality behind an NFT. It allows me to go and like buy the file or buy the NFT. And
yeah, it's like basically behind the scenes from an infrastructure level. Like, if you're viewing it on OpenSea or wherever, they're like grabbing that CID because what's happening is there's some artist over here that uploaded the content through their website and through their NFT, and like OpenSea somehow needs to like grab that content, even though they don't like own it, and then like display it in their marketplace, right? And so that CID is like a verifiable transport thing that allows them to do it, and it just makes this decentralized world kind of work.
Yeah. So I imagine, a big piece of what it seems like you guys do is kind of like this, a little bit of education. You mentioned you write a lot of blog posts.
Yeah.
I've read quite a few of them just to try to educate myself on the space. And then the usability of the platform it's pretty straightforward.
Right.
So an artist can go on and they can upload their media by themselves without having to, basically commission a developer.
Yep.
Is that right? Is that kind of the big
push
for you guys?
Because otherwise, basically, they would have nowhere to go. So to have the functionalities we have, you can't use something like Dropbox. Like YouTube works, but like imagine if you bought an NFT and then had to view an ad on YouTube. Like that would be the worst experience in the world. And so like we get rid of that, right? We were like, all right, essentially what we are is YouTube level capabilities for any file type, without ads, without commenting sections, without like suggested videos, any of that kind of stuff. And like that's what people needed in this space. And like we keep like moving along that path, because what we found is the internet's no longer happening on the platforms. They're happening on Discord. They're happening on Telegram. It's text messaging. I always like to say that the revolution will not be platformed. And the reason I say that is like you need to go to Discord to view content or get access to content. And when you're in there, like YouTube link being popped out to YouTube doesn't make, it's kind of like redundant, right?
Yeah.
But being popped into Dropbox is also like extremely kind of like a terrible experience, because then you're in there with like, anonymous armadillos and like all this kind of weird stuff is happening. And so like we just provide a clean experience around media, files, videos, whatever, where it's like, click the link, I'm experiencing the media. And that ultimately, if you're forecasting into the future, it's what we think the internet is going to be about, regardless if NFTs are exactly the thing or not.
So if you think back to like the original MVP, what Matt built for Pinata in the very early days,
Yep.
I mean, where you're at right now, significantly different? Like
No,
way more features or different features?
we have
or-
more features, but like the core product is exactly the same. Like it's 100% the same. Like the number one node we ever spun up still exists, right? And we have like hundreds of other ones, but it's the core product. The core underlying like philosophy is still there, which is like we want to be fast. We're going to be premium, and like some people we get pushback on our pricing sometimes, but it's like we ensure that we're stable and we're fast, and those are the things that matter to us. And any product or feature that we're adding, we can't sacrifice stability and speed because like a lot of the space is built on us, and like if we go down, like you'll see a lot of NFTs like not work, right? So it's a very important thing to us that we don't go down.
Excellent. So I've seen, you guys launched submarining.
Yep.
Tell us, just like an elevator pitch of what submarining is.
So basically and this sounds kind of dumb when I like describe it back if you're not in the NFT space, but basically NFTs used to all be public. Like if you were viewing the content, the video or the image was public and you couldn't gate access to it. It couldn't be private. And so we needed to develop a way to like create privacy. And submarining is that. And so in 2021, basically as the NFT space is like growing up, we saw people doing this thing called token gating. But the experience that was happening, this is a terrible elevator pitch, by the way, but the experience that was happening was they were token gating their Discord channels. And so like you had to own the NFT to get access into a Discord.
Yeah,
right?
get verified
Right.
in the
and then what we saw is like they were doing that, and then they were like uploading a file behind that gated private channel, and like that's how you got your like private file. And we're like, we can cut out at least 10 clicks if we just create something. And so submarining is just a token gating product or a gating product. If you really want to like go old school, it's basically just a paywall, whether you're paying for your NFT and getting access or like however you're doing it. But people need a way to gate their media that is not reliant on account management. So like you don't need to have an account with YouTube to get access. The way you get access to content through Submarine is you own the NFT, right? And then we like took that concept and we're like, NFT space may or may not last. Like let's kind of move this out of the NFT space. We started applying it to geolocation. So you have to be in a certain location to get access to content. We take concepts in the NFT space and we don't think about them literally, because if you think too literally about it, you end up doing like really dumb things. And so like we try to be a little bit abstract of like, okay, they're doing this behavior. What is the long-term behavior that they're actually trying to point at? And ultimately it's this kind of gating concept or this unlockable concept. And it doesn't matter if it's an NFT or, forcing somebody to retweet something or like ultimately watching an ad to view content. People can build whatever they want ultimately with our Submarine API.
So how do you get yourself, out of your own way, essentially? Like you said, you kind of have to think about it in an abstract way. It's not straightforward. You're not looking at exactly what they're doing, but kind of where they're looking to go. How do you train your mind, or is there certain things you do with your team?
This is why I live in Omaha. Like 100%, I live in Omaha and stayed in Omaha, and because if you're in Silicon Valley or if you're in New York or wherever you like the bigger cities, you don't have room to breathe like with your ideas. And at the end of the day, I had to go home and try to explain this to like farmers, right? And they're like, that whatever you're saying doesn't make any sense, right? And so when you like have that space to think about it, you get to think clear, and you're not in that like social validation hype stage. And so like what I like to do is I'll fly to San Francisco or I'll fly to New York. I'll update my my thinking, like whatever the latest trend is or whatever. And then I go back to Omaha and I sit in my office and then I think about it. And I'll do the same thing like if I'm in Discord or Twitter or whatever. And I try to remove myself from like whatever the hottest thing is. Like AI right now is obviously on fire. And like I'm in there playing with it too. But you need to take a step back and then just like not believe the hype. right? Otherwise, ultimately, I think bad things happen. You make bad decisions, and have to be very careful of that.
You think Dolly is going to start creating NFTs and
So like to explain my thought process around it, like I'm in Midjourney, which is one of the AI things right now, and I'm like trying to prompt it to like create just ridiculous things. But then I'm like, all right, then what do we do with this, right? It's like, what's interesting, it's in Discord. They give you the image, and then it's like, then what? How do I monetize this? Mm-hmm. And like, to me, that feels exactly like crypto voxels again, right? It's like, okay, there's a bunch of people like doing this thing, and then they're going to want to do this other thing with it, right?
Yeah.
And that other thing to me is going to be Pinata. What it looks like exactly, I don't know. But like those are the things that I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking like, how do we bolt AI into Pinata? I'm like, all right, people are doing AI things, and there's going to be an output from it, and then that needs to go do something. That doing something, I hope, is ultimately on Pinata.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit. There's a lot of founders in the room. There's a lot of people building stuff, and a big piece of building an early stage company is going out and raising capital. I listened to a few of your past interviews and read a few articles. And really, it sounded like kind of the early days. It was tough to raise capital. It was tough to go out and get in front of VCs, get in front of investors, and start describing Pinata.
Yeah.
And get them to understand.
Yeah. So we had a problem where we were in crypto and we didn't want a token associated with Pinata. So like when we launched in 2018, the hot thing to do was ICOs, or initial coin offerings, and we never wanted to do that. The reason we didn't want to do it is because we felt it was going to harm the product long term. And also it was just like, it didn't make any sense. And so we were in the crypto space trying to raise capital without a token. And they're like, are you going to do a token? Are you going to do a token? And we're like, no. So like they didn't write us a check. And then like being in the Midwest, it's definitely a harder environment. And they didn't understand it like 100% what we were doing. And like we weren't making money. So I get that. And so like ultimately what we did is like, we took an innovation grant, right? We did consulting on the side. I lived in my parents' basement. Matt, struggled financially as well. Like it wasn't like a great time. It wasn't a great experience. But like we were 100% committed ultimately to Pinata, even though we had consulting on the side. And I think some people and we were starting to make like good money on the side too. And it was like, we never let that get in the way of like, we want to be a product company and not a consulting company. And so like we stayed disciplined in that environment. And then ultimately the way I got seed money was they read my blog, right? They found me. It wasn't like my pitching abilities apparently are not great. And so they found me and kind of like plucked me out of the air. And were like, hey, like you're actually thinking about this space in a critical way. And like, we're not seeing any other NFT company in early 2021 thinking the way that you were thinking. And what was funny about it, that same week that they reached out to me, I had just started like trying to fundraise, and I reached out to like 150 people. None of them got back to me, like 0 of them. And then Greylock and Offline came in, read my blogs, and ultimately decided to invest back then.
That's incredible. The blogs work.
Yeah. Well, so it's like behind the scenes. So they read the blog, but then they're like going out and talking to our customers, right? So they're doing back channeling of like, what do you guys think about Pinata? What do you think about Pinata? And like, they also saw it everywhere. It was in everybody's GitHub. It was in all of these smart contracts. And they're like, who the hell is Pinata? Right? Because like, we're not in that Silicon Valley, like little buzz network. Yep. And so it's like, how is this company getting so much traction? But they're like, we don't know who they are. And so like, when they did all of that research, they're like, wow, this company probably has an opportunity. So like, talking to other entrepreneurs, it's like, get customers. Like they weren't paying us, but they were using us. Also, like we were investing our own money to run that server, right? It was like a $20,000 per month bill that Matt and I could not afford. And we just felt like it was worth it to make it happen. And then ultimately, from there, it's like get investment. Like right when we get investment, we actually got a business model, which I would recommend like getting a business model a little bit earlier. But yeah, and then from there it was just like everything kind of like fell into place, and then the Series A was relatively easy just because we had a bunch of growth and kind of had that rubber stamp after that.
Even though they reached out to you, maybe this is a foolish question, were the conversations still pretty difficult? I mean, you didn't have a business model. You were not making any money. In fact, you were burning quite a bit.
Yeah.
Were the conversations still really difficult?
No. So that was the first time a VC had actually pitched my company back to me. And that's when I was like, oh, this. So it wasn't like I wasn't in the nitty gritty of talking about IPFS or like. Usually what would happen is like people would be like, how do you compare to Filecoin or Arweave or like all these like super technical blah, 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 like things. And this one, they're like, we know what NFTs are. We know like the hype that's happening isn't going to make sense long term, but like there's like threads of things that are happening. And you're talking about it the way that we're thinking about it, right? And so like that was a perfect match. And that was the first time that had happened. Previously, it was like just a battle, like just a constant battle. It was like free education to the VCs, and then it was like, just not fun at all. And that was like actually a fun phone call, right?
How did you, just mentally get through that time? That sounds like, you're having this burn, you're doing these pitches, you're like, you're educating them, and then it's it's a no. How do you, mentally keep going for years?
So we just felt we were right. Like, that's it. Like, we're talking to our customers. They're telling us we're doing like a good job and we're doing the right thing. And like, ultimately we just felt the market was wrong and we were right. And we weren't buying into hype. And like, we knew that. Like, we knew we weren't going to do a token. We weren't going to be pushed around. Like, VCs like want to push you around too, right? And we were like, we're not going to be pushed around. We're going to like stand our ground on like who we are and what we're going to do. And then going back to 1 goes to 2 to eventually 56 to 1,000, you focus on those indicators, not like, did a VC say yes or no? Because like that is a variable I can't control for. And like, maybe they were just having a bad day. You never know. And so like, if you're just focused on your customers and talking to them, like you can block out a lot of noise, right? And that's ultimately why, we made it through it.
So outside, I imagine seed capital and then, go and raise your big round this last fall, allows you to go and start expanding your team, expanding kind of your footprint. Who was your first hire outside of you and Matt?
Yeah, so we hired 2 engineers, a back-end engineer and a front-end engineer. We actually hired them on our own dime in like October of 2020 before we even got money. And they helped us on the consulting side, and then we were able to like in their free time pay them to like build Pinata and ultimately create the thing that we built our business model around. And we're like huge foundation for us. And then after them, it was like we brought in a designer and then marketing and so on and so forth. And I don't know if we like hired exactly right. I think, there's always, I guess, better ways to do things. But we did like get a lot of people in the door and we got them like bought into like what Pinata is doing. And ultimately they're very good at, being flexible and like just trying to like roll with the changes. Like NFTs are down 90%. I don't know if you guys know that. Like we have to like change what we're doing very quickly to survive that. And the team is incredible at doing that.
I've noticed a lot of the employees are out of state.
Yeah.
Some, many of them out of country.
Yep.
How do you think about, managing that remote team? Is that, can that be an advantage? Do you see it as an advantage to having people all over the place?
So my opinion on like the remote work versus in work is like either be all remote or be all in office. The hybrid thing, I would like hate. Like I would 100% hate that. But like we're 100% remote, and that's our reality. So we're going to solve for all of the challenges that it creates, and like try to maximize all of the good things that come from it. And it's great. Like we have people in 20 states and different countries, and like that different perspective allows us to build a better product, we think, ultimately. And that's like why we do it. Like we leaned into it heavily because we were like, all right, let's get people from different backgrounds and different perspectives. And we know that if we do that, they're going to help us build a like better company because of that.
What's been the biggest learning in doing that? Managing that team, even across borders, it's got to be, has to be some inefficiencies there that you have to work through.
Yeah, I mean they don't know where Omaha is on a map, and so like I
start
with teaching them that, and then I teach them about corn and cattle, and then I try to get them to a square state. Many of them haven't been to like a square state, and so I try to get them to like the Midwest, or like I'll even count Arizona as a square state, and then from an inefficiency perspective, it's like, one of the things we're learning is like the cutoff, it's not as natural. Like when you walk out that door from your office, like your day, it doesn't end because like people still Slack and email and all that kind of stuff. But like mentally, there's something that happens there. For us, like our work kind of just bleed, like you get up out of your chair at your house and then like walk over to your kitchen, and then like there was no like ending, right? Mm-hmm. And so like trying to like help people not get burnt out and not carry that work into ultimately their home life is like something that we try to do. Another thing is like keeping people connected is difficult because like those side conversations when you're in the hallway are important. When you end up going out for lunch, those are like important moments that we don't have as a fully remote company. And so we try to cultivate them in different ways, and they're not perfect. But like we do virtual coffees every other week where you get paired up with somebody in the company. You get to talk for 30 minutes about like whatever, right? And like that's a huge thing for us and an important part of our culture. And then on Fridays, we do this thing called Tut Talks, which is just like an all hands meeting where I just talk about whatever. It could be company priorities, or it could be like my latest opinion on like the business model of McDonald's. Like it doesn't really matter what we do, but it's like trying to bring people together in unique ways so that they can like build connections. And then we try to meet in person when we can. And when we do, there's like massive advancements in thinking and like what we're doing, and then just relationship building. So like you can't replace in-person stuff, but if we're going to be a remote company all over the place, we do have to try the best we can.
Excellent. Well, I want to open it up for questions. I'm sure a ton of people have stuff that they are desiring to ask. So anybody, just raise your hand, whatever you'd like to ask. Yeah.
When you had your first customer, your second customer, were you charging out of the gate, or did you kind of give it away for free?
So pricing is like the hardest thing for us, or me, I guess maybe. So we were deciding between, should we be a monthly subscription company or should we be a usage company? And we had one user tell us, no, I want you to be a usage-based company. And so we were like, all right, so we're going to charge you 15 cents per gigabyte to store data on our platform. That is a bad way to make money. Like it didn't work. And like we eventually, ultimately when we built a good business model, we got rid of that because like that was just not a good way. It's like making 15 cents at a time is very difficult. And we tried for 2 years.
You need a lot of gigabytes.
Yeah, exactly. And so like what that taught us though is like, don't listen to a single customer, right? Like we literally, I don't even know this guy's name. We could probably go back into the emails and find him, but like we asked one person's opinion, went with it, because we were trying to decide between the two, and we were leaning towards being a subscription company. And I think if we were, like, we would have been more successful. On the other side of that, though, is we got a bunch of users because we were so cheap. We weren't free, but we were very, very cheap. And so we got a lot of buy-in and a lot of users in the early days. And so like I don't regret it because like we did get all those users, but I don't know if I would do it that way again.
So you said about 90% of NFTs are down recently, but you're mentioning the things that are like art, music, things like that. NFTs can be applied into, like for example, California, their DMV, they just started issuing titles as NFTs. So you think that that's going to change your industry in particular?
Yeah, so NFTs are not, they, number one, don't have to be financial. Number two, they are not assets or not all assets. And I wrote a blog about like NFTs can be assets. They could appreciate in price, right? But the majority of them are going to be consumables. And a consumable, you know, you might buy for $5 and it ultimately goes to zero. And so like once you start thinking of it that way, NFTs are just tools. And ultimately NFTs have no value unless there is something behind it, right? And so we knew that early because number one, there's a lot of kind of Twitter rhetoric happening where they're like, this NFT is worth $1 million because XYZ. And I'm like, and they'll be like, it was created in 2018 and I had created an NFT in 2018 and nobody was buying it, right? I was like, this is not checking out. And so if you think critically about what they are, they're just a way to exchange something, data or music or like whatever. It's just like an unlocking mechanism going from one wallet to another wallet. And if you just think of it that way, then the applications are endless, but it doesn't mean you need to pay $1 million for it. And so like, I think what I'm most disappointed about in the NFT space is a lot of the space hasn't gotten over that. They didn't learn how to build a business model that didn't rely on ultimately the price of the NFT going up when like the majority of things in life go down, right? And one of the, in that blog, what I talked about is like, you can create an NFT that represents the building that a coffee shop sits in. You can create an NFT that represents the lease agreement. Both of those are assets, right? You can create an NFT that represents ultimately the LLC of the coffee shop. But then like you can also create an NFT that represents that cup of coffee. And like, yes, I own that cup of coffee when I buy it and I bought it for $5. But like when I drink it, it's going to zero, right? And like all of those can be NFTs. And if people open up kind of their thinking around them and apply them in different ways, that's where I get excited about the space again versus kind of the silly hype that happened. Dusty?
Big fan. I've been for a long time.
First time, long time.
Try to invest, realize. But I don't understand a lot about it, and I think that's okay. In fact, one of the things I get excited about is like you're super smart about it in a way that like I peaked on. Like I won't understand half of what you do. And I think that's really cool. And so I asked ChatGPT, what hard question would you ask the founder of Pinata? And it responded really well, of course, which, first of all, ChatGPT knows what Pinata is. That's really good. But it says, and I agree with this, how does Pinata plan to address the concern about centralization and potential censorship, given that it's a centralized company built on decentralization?
Yeah, so that's a deep...
It's like a good question.
So
We need another 40
I
minutes.
didn't get into like so in those early years we had a lot of issues where we were a centralized company. We're a centralized company built on a distributed or decentralized platform, which is IPFS. And so what we always talk about is if you want decentralization, we can be one of your nodes. You can upload content to us. We're going to make it fast. We're going to make it stable. But ultimately, I always talk about it like it's my bar. And if you come into my bar and you're just like being an asshole, like I'm going to kick you out of my bar, right? And that's how I think about Pinata ultimately. And like that's not censorship. That's like just like stop doing illegal things or dumb things in ultimately on Pinata. And so like we had to battle that question a lot. And ultimately those questions go away when like people realize like, majority of people don't care about decentralization. Now, where does decentralization help? Maybe with like banking. So don't all be in Silicon Valley Bank. Like that is like a real decentralization question. But like we try to like address stability through the best means possible. And some of that is like decentralization or distributed strategies where like we have nodes all over the place, right? And that makes us more stable. There's also like, now I'm going way on a tangent, so thanks Chat GPT. But where people get confused is like, just because you have a token doesn't make it decentralized. Actually, if you had a token and if you look at the token splits on a lot of these protocols, they're very, very centralized. And the ownership is actually like a few people. And we were like, that doesn't make any sense. Like we would rather you know who we are. And if something goes wrong, you have somebody to call, right? Like very old school, like pick up the phone and like talk to me about Pinata sucks versus this protocol sucks. And you're like, who do you call? When Bitcoin goes down, and it has in the past, but it hasn't recently, like who do you call? You have nobody to actually call to resolve your problems. Or if you lose your crypto because you sent it to a decentralized wallet, you're screwed. And like for the majority of people, that is not like a great place to interact with stuff. Like I did it early on because like it was fun to like, I guess, be risky, but like most people don't want that risk. And so we're just upfront about it. Like we're in a decentralized space. We like the values of like ownership and like agency and autonomy. Like I like those words, and decentralization pops into it. But you don't need to be on a decentralized platform, right? Or a decentralized protocol to enable that stuff. So I've thought about that one a lot.
There's a lot of interest now, especially like in the Midwest and Nebraska, big laggards in the Web3 NFT crypto space. And it seems like there's a lot more people that are willing to build or at least wanting to build.
Yeah.
Or at least learn the jargon around crypto. What do you suggest, or how do you suggest that people go about learning about things and learning about developing on blockchain and getting involved? Because it's a pretty complex and confusing process.
Apply it to what you know. And I didn't know farming, but the first blog I wrote about NFTs was December 30th, 2017. And I applied it to farming. And my idea was we're going to create an NFT for every acre of land that a farmer has. And we're going to take the combine data. So like these combines are pretty complex. They have data flowing off of them that can show you that we planted this much in the spring. And then when you're harvesting it, it produced this much bushels per acre, right? And like you could start betting on that if you wanted to, right? And it was kind of the concept. And I just applied it to what I knew and what like other people around me knew. And then like I was able to build a foundation around that. The other thing is like just build and apply it, period, even if it's not to something you know. Like being in the NFT space early on, I'm not technical at the end of the day. I can't code. But like I was just piecing stuff together. And if you do that, you learn about how hard it is and then like create a company that solves that problem, right? Like run into all those things that are very, very difficult. And if you do that, like you're going to find a problem or a company ultimately out of that. And so, ultimately the internet exists. You can learn anything you need to learn. You can be in any Discord or on any Twitter thread and like learn a lot. So, I don't think like being in the Midwest is like the problem per se. So.
So you talked about some of the things you're disappointed with Web3 and some of the things you're excited about. It sounds like a lot of the things you're excited about are more mundane, like the leasing agreement, the cup of coffee. Do you think that's really the future of Web3 is like the more boring traditional stuff?
So I think that people, like what I got out of interviewing a lot of our customers in like the NFT space, especially we did this huge project where we interviewed hundreds of customers in January and February of 2021. And we're like, why are you entering the NFT space? And what a lot of them said is like, we don't like that we can't monetize our content the way that we want to. So like, if I'm a YouTube creator, I get like a terrible percentage of revenue from ads. They're like, we want a different environment to like show off our content, whether it's music or videos or whatever it is. It's like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, or like, you can only do one thing, right? If you really think about it from a file perspective. And they're like, we want freedom of like expression of our content. And so like, those are the things that are exciting. And it's like, ultimately that comes down to like, just, they need to get paid somehow. They need to have a business model. And then they need to apply it to some file type. What that file type is, to us doesn't matter. And so, yeah, like, ultimately it is the mundane stuff, but like, I think that the mundane stuff is like the stuff that has kept Pinata afloat. Like at the end of the day, we're data storage. Like we're a hosting company. You peel back all of the stuff that we do, it's not that complex. We just apply it in a different way, and we think about it in a different way than like other people have in the past, and like that's our advantage. So hopefully that answers it. Yeah. Ow.
2 questions, if I may. The first one, so speed and
Stability.
are value props to your customers. How do you maintain that philosophy internally as your team is growing so quickly? You talked about some of the rituals, but maybe it's management style or specifically.
So we do this thing, another thing that we do on Fridays, which is actually backing even further up. Our community support team is actually in our product org. And instead of being like off on its own in like a cost center, we put it under product so that it got like the recognition that it needed. It's like, they're not the sideshow, they are the show. Like they are the indicators to us on a weekly basis, whether or not our system is working, and like how we're doing, all that kind of stuff. And so like that gives us instant feedback. And like a lot of people will be like, our best engineers shouldn't be doing support because like that's too expensive. They should be, building better features or what. Like we do support. We have our 9/11 channel that's like, when stuff's going wrong, everybody's jumping in. One of them, we were down for 7 hours. And like we built systems to ensure that that would never happen again. And like, so it's just a focus. It's like being down is not okay. It's not acceptable. And that just kind of like permeates across the company. And so I don't know if it's like a management style, but it's just like, we can't be down. Like that is not an acceptable thing at Pinata, is to be down.
Priorities while you're also telling your team not to be burnt out, take
Yep.
care of your priority, and you're safe to log off. I think Apple also has that support structure within product.
Yeah.
Which might be worried about this.
I don't know where I got it from, but maybe.
I
Yeah.
think you do. Second question, would you take venture capital again?
Probably not. I took venture capital this time because I felt that Pinata was that company and I didn't want to miss it. I know what I signed up for. But like a lot of businesses don't need venture capital. Like you don't need it. It doesn't help you. It makes your life harder, more difficult. So the long answer to that is like, I wouldn't do a venture scale business. And like, I think Pinata is that, and that's why I wanted to do it. But like the next company is probably going to be a little bit more boring. Probably like based in commodities or something that to that effect. So.
Back to Coleman.
Yep.
With Web3 being such a nascent space, what do you think is going to draw like further adoption for, say, like the layman? Do you think it'd be like interoperability with current Web2 infrastructure, or do you think it'd be maybe just educating more of the like, I guess, basic user in this context about the capabilities that Web3 currently has?
I mean, so like the things that I've been feeling are like people like to own and interact content at a a much more unique level instead of like getting mass content on Facebook or YouTube or wherever. They do like that experience. Where they're currently experiencing it is mostly in wallets. And so they have like their NFTs sitting in a wallet and they like that experience. But like getting access to crypto is too difficult. Like that is a huge hurdle from a user experience perspective. And so like it's going to be about the user experience. Like ultimately, I think the perfect world, you don't even know NFTs are behind the scenes. You don't even know crypto or like whatever the rails of the payment systems are back there. Like all you want is to like own something and like experience it. And so like we need to abstract away some of these like complexities and these talking points and experiences and make them easy. Ultimately, I think it's going to happen through like Apple. Like Apple's going to have a wallet. They kind of already do. Like Apple's like a leader in cryptography. Like at the end of the day, crypto stands for cryptography, not cryptocurrency. And crypto is a really powerful tool. And so like if you have crypto wallets sitting in your iPhone, like that's where adoption happens. It's just like you shouldn't be thinking about it. And I think we're thinking about it too much right now.
So do you see like the future being more divergent where it's either Web 2 or Web 3? There's not really like a scenario where they kind of mingle.
So internally, at Pinata, I tell people not to think like Web 2 versus Web 3 because like it kind of pigeonholes your thinking. And what happens there is like we identify somebody as Web 2, but really like they're not Web 2. They might be like a brand, like let's say it's Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola is not Web 2, right? They're just like a company that wants to like advertise, market, like engage with people, but they want to do it in new and interesting ways. And so if you like think of it that way instead of Web 2 versus Web 3, I think it like helps like framing and like what you're trying to do. And so like I don't think it's going to be that like black and white. It's going to be very gray. And then like over time, it's just going to happen. And again, you're not going to see it. You're not going to realize it. And it's very much, this is like an infrastructure play. It's not like front and center. And right now we're front and center. And I think that's ultimately what the problem is. But going one step further, like wallets and crypto, like we're interacting with cryptography. Like that's actually really cool. So like, if you think about cryptocurrency, it's like very, very, very good user experience for cryptography. And like people that have interacted with it, you're using cryptography. That's actually kind of cool. Like we've made that advancement. We just need to like make more advancements around that. So. Anybody else? Yeah.
Moving back to what you said earlier about the creators wanting more control of sharing their content, whatever they're making, and they're utilizing NFTs to do this.
Yep.
What do you think is a good way for someone who doesn't know much about NFTs or this world? How can they support these creators and get involved from a customer perspective?
So like good creators will typically have like a Discord or like a community group that you can get into, and then like they'll teach you if you don't know crypto or you don't know how to buy an NFT or like that kind of stuff, like you can learn from them. And so like the communities are actually very small. They're like a couple hundred people, maybe thousands, and they're extremely supportive. And so like that is I think where you'll learn. Now you always have to be careful because at the end of the day they're trying to sell you something. And just make sure that you're being safe. But just jumping into Discord or Twitter and like meeting people, friends, if you will, in the space is like the best way to do it. And ultimately, like that's how I did it. And I was doing it walking around in a metaverse because like that made sense to me. But a lot of people do it in Discord, just having conversations. They're just trying to learn. Ultimately you'll find a NFT that you relate to. You'll be like, hey, I want to buy this NFT. And then like when you try to buy that NFT, you'll learn all of the problems in the space, but like you also like were incentivized to do it because you wanted to have that. And so like, yeah, it's just kind of, to me, it feels natural. Hopefully this makes sense, but just try to find an NFT that you relate to, and then like that will unlock and open up a bunch of doors into the space and like how to support people. Yep.
Out of all your customers, who's making the most money right now, and how are they doing it?
Gaming, independent gamers or independent game developers. So, and it makes actually a lot of sense if you think about it. If you think about the mobile kind of revolution in 2010 or whenever you want to like term that time period, it was like independent developers that were independent game developers that had a lot of success. Ultimately, they created things like Angry Birds or like whatever. You had all those silly games in mobile, and then they became a big gaming company. We're seeing the same thing with NFTs, and at the end of the day, like NFTs can be apps, right? And so what we're seeing is people are uploading full game applications to us, attaching it to the NFTs, and then managing access to the game through that NFT. And that's like where all of the excitement and like all of the usage is actually happening, is with game NFTs. And like that's where we're really excited, because there's a bunch of game developers out there that don't want to like be in the nitty gritty of like running software infrastructure, and so we can take care of that for them. They can focus on developing their game, building their game, like the things that they know, and then just upload it to us, attach it to an NFT, and off they go, and they're making money.
What are those games? Like, what's an example of those games?
Yeah, so there's like classic like first person shooting games. Like there's space games. I've seen racing games. Like it's all over the board. Yeah.
Last one.
Yeah.
So going back to the question about community, obviously the space is very community centric. So maybe you guys are already doing this, or is there a future where you guys are going to create your own kind of communities within the space? Maybe like a big, HubSpot does like their inbound conference. Like,
Yeah.
Are you thinking about trying to capture that aspect?
Yeah, we would lead with a hackathon. I think that's the most like natural to us.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it internally. We sponsor a lot of hackathons, and that's kind of like our proxy to do those types of things. But ultimately to us, we want to see people building, even if you don't know how to build. Like we want you at a hackathon, and we want you thinking about like what's next. And my favorite thing about Web3 is that you can't Google the answer, or you can't chat GPT the answer. Like if you want to like be successful in this space, you have to have original ideas and think of new and creative things. And the best way that we think to do that is ultimately through a hackathon. So maybe one day we'll do a hackathon.
There you go. Last question we always ask every speaker is, what can this community as a giving first community do to help you or support you?
Yeah, I would say sign up for Pinata. Like that's the most easy one. Like
I love it.
Upload content and be like, I actually don't understand this at all, and then email me and be like, I can help you walk through it. The space is complicated still, so like I'm always interested in people that are new to the space that are struggling, because like I know the space really, really well. I've been in it for 6 years at this point, or 5 or whatever. And so like I don't see like how difficult it actually is to be in it. And so like if you're new to the space or naive to the space, that's like actually a huge advantage if you tell us about that experience.
I love it. So you're opening up the gates to emails.
Kyle@pinata.cloud.
All right.
I get hundreds of emails already, so just say Scale Omaha, and maybe I'll find it.
I love it. Excellent. Could we get a round of applause for Kyle? Two things before we stand up and go here. One is we have a phenomenal event coming up that is spearheaded by Justin. It is going to be the Startup Job Mixer. It's coming up in April. Please find it on LinkedIn, follow it, share it. Everybody be there. It's supported by a ton of great startups, and if you're looking for work
I'll be
in
there.
startups, Kyle's going to be there too.
Yeah, Pinata will be there.
Yep, you can heckle him about the
Yeah.
platform while you're there. That'll be great.